Whenever you see a video with the title like this one, usually the title absolutely is not true. To reach 2000 ELO, you need to consistently train every part of your game for over a year. However, some people are extremely disciplined with their training but still find themselves stuck and not able to reach 2000 ELO. So whilst one single tip will not automatically qualify you for 2000 ELO, it certainly can help. But what is this one tip that I'm talking about? Well, there's probably more than just one tip, but I feel like all of these individual tips deserve one video, so if you like this video, leave a comment below if you'd like to see more. But what we're going to be looking at today is imbalances in chess and looking how we can use them to our advantage. Before we do start today's video though, if you guys are looking for coaching, feel free to check out my new website in the description below where you guys can check out my coaching options depending on your online rating. We have a bunch of new things like our student testimonials and a 25% off discount code FIRST for anyone purchasing their first lesson. A big thank you for all of my students who make these kind of videos possible, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Well, to properly structure this video, I need to tell you what an imbalance is. Whilst the most known example of this is the exchange sacrifice, there are plenty of other examples as well. Let's go through them. Exchange sacrifices, pawn structural imbalances, knight versus bishop imbalance, opposite colored bishop imbalance, 2 rooks versus 1 queen imbalance, and 2 pieces versus 1 rook imbalance. If you're an avid Jeremy Silman reader, you would know that there are plenty more types of imbalances, like a space imbalance. However, these concepts kind of fall under the umbrella of theoretical chess. So whilst a lot of people might not fully understand these concepts, the memorization of chess openings and middle game plans is a substitute for this knowledge. In today's video, we'll be looking at the 2 most common imbalances in chess and how you can use them to your advantage. We'll look at pawn structural imbalances and basic piece imbalances as well. Whilst exchange sacrifices, 2 rooks versus 1 queen, and 2 pieces versus 1 rook imbalances are all worth learning, it's dishonest to say it'll skyrocket your ELO. The opportunities to actually utilize these concepts will be few and far between. However, pawn structural and piece imbalances are possible in every game you play. So with that being said, we'll split today's video into 2 distinct sections: basic piece imbalances and pawn structural imbalances. Let's get started with basic piece imbalances. I think the best way to introduce the topic of basic piece imbalances is by showing you a theoretical version of it. Whilst basic piece imbalances are not specifically used in the opening, by looking at an opening example, it's a lot more clear to explain why these are good. Let's use this Caro-Kann line for example. After e4, c6, e4, d5, white can play e5, the advanced Caro-Kann. Speaking of openings, today's video is brought to you by chessmind.ai. Chessmind.ai is a next-generation AI-powered chess improvement platform. Not only does Chessmind have completely free puzzles, but they also have a wide range of courses you can select for less than $5 per month. All of the courses are handcrafted by Chilean Grandmaster Mauricio Flores and are designed to make you a master of any opening variation in around an hour. They perfectly balance top-quality theory with ease of learning to take the boring out of any study. Once you've completed these opening courses, you can either play puzzles deriving from said opening or dive into their AI integrations which quiz your knowledge on what you've learned. The AI acts as a replacement for a coach, asking you to find characteristics of certain positions and explain the advantages and disadvantages. You can check out chessmind.ai in the description below with my link where you can also get 30% off your purchase. However, continuing on, Black has this tricky response of c5, the Botvinnik Karl's defense. Theoretically speaking, white should play d takes c5 here. However, for players below 1800 ELO, c3 and knight f3 are played a combined 73% of the time. So after c3, knight c6 and knight f3, we can now be introduced to a basic piece imbalance. Bishop g4 is a very important move for black here. Why? Because in this position, white's knight on f3 is much stronger than our light-squared bishop. For example, if h3, the position suddenly turns negative 0.6 for black. After bishop takes f3 and queen takes f3, creating a basic piece imbalance, we can play c takes d4, and knight takes d4, picking up the pawn. Now, this is a good example of removing the defender, which is a simple tactic in chess everyone should be familiar with. But let's say instead, white sees this threat and plays bishop e2, allowing their bishop to recapture the knight, whilst the queen stays defending the d4 pawn. Well, now we can create the same piece imbalance. Bishop takes f3, c takes d4, and e6. In this variation, we have not won a pawn and it's white's turn to move. So why have we consciously given up our light-squared bishop when we're taught that bishops are worth slightly more than knights? Well, this is a simple question to answer. Of course, I know that this is a good trade because it's theoretical, but in this instance, let's try to find the exact reasoning without relying on the answer of, this move is good because the engine tells me so. A good place to start when trading off a bishop for a knight is understanding whether or not the bishop was your good or bad bishop. We can do this by counting our pawns and seeing which color complexion has the most pawns on it for our side. In this case, the H, F, E, D, and B pawns are all on light squares, whilst only the G and A pawns are on dark squares. Because 5 pawns are on light squares and only 2 pawns are on dark squares, this means our light squared bishop was our bad bishop. This might be a familiar term if you've played the French defense, as we often refer to the dark squared bishop as the bad French bishop. If we have ample pawns on light squares, as they defend diagonally, they are constantly defending the light squares around our structure. This renders the light squared bishop as a much less useful piece than our dark squared bishop, as we will not have long-term light squared weaknesses. In some cases, because the pawns are occupying the light squares bishop may struggle for activity and space, which is ever present in the French defense, where said bishop will remain on the b8 square throughout a lot of the game as it has no useful squares to develop to until much later. With all that being said, we identified the dark square bishop as our bad bishop in this position, and traded it off for a knight that can defend both color complexions. This should not be the end of our thoughtfulness though, as when we make any permanent decision in chess, we need to have a long-term plan to back it up. In this case, the knight on f3 was a key defender to white's only real weakness in this position, the backwards d4 pawn. Even though the plan I'm going to show you is theoretical, it helps to show it as to understand how we're going to use this piece imbalance to our benefit. If white castles short, we play knight g-e7, aiming to reroute to f5, and apply more pressure to the d4 pawn. After knight c3, knight f5, and white must defend their pawn. However, after bishop e3, it's a little bit difficult for black to continue putting pressure on what we thought would be a weakness for white. The reality is though, it doesn't matter if we don't win the d4 pawn right now. Trading a bishop for a knight is not a losing trade materially speaking, so even if we don't achieve what we initially set out to achieve, we're still going to keep playing chess in an equal position. The d4 pawn will always be a weakness for white. In fact, I can prove this. As on Lichess, players under 1800 win this game as black 54% of the time after bishop e7. Let's say rook c1 is played, followed by bishop g5 for black. Here, black even has a 60% win rate despite this position being completely even according to the engine. Why is this? Because even though black cannot immediately win material, we have made permanent changes to the board which will hinder our opponent's ability to defend our primary target, the d4 pawn. When we think about winning in chess, we immediately think of permanent, irreversible changes to the board, like winning a pawn or a piece. However, to reach 2000 ELO, we need to broaden our horizons a little bit and think of any permanent change to the board as a type of micro-win. Whilst the high-level engine will draw this position with perfect play, people below a certain ELO will lose more often than not for white as they cannot undo the permanent changes that have been made in this position. Those permanent changes are the placement of their backwards d-pawn and the basic piece imbalance. Just to show you how this game might continue, let's imagine bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, knight b5, which is played in 52% of games, castles, and let's just imagine a wasteful move for white here like a3. Suddenly, black has a6, removing the defender of the d4 pawn, so after knight c3, black will finally cash in on the free d4 pawn, which also weakens the now vulnerable e5 pawn. I understand that this is a very basic and amateur example of how creating a basic piece imbalance can help you win a game. On top of this, we just looked at a theoretical example, so let's look at another one. For this second example, let's look at a non-theoretical position. This is a game I played over the board. Although I made a decision relatively early in the game, I was out of theory, and my idea was just me applying the same concepts I'm teaching in this video. We can skip through the theory for this one and get to move 11, where black just played c6. If you want to see the full game, I'll leave a Lichess study link in the description for everything we're covering in this video. You can see, just like in the first theoretical position, I have a bishop staring at a knight, with the opportunity to trade it off. Let me walk you through my exact thought process. First, I counted the pawns on each colored square. There are 5 pawns on the dark squares and 3 pawns on the light squares. This means that my dark square bishop is my bad bishop. However, what is the long-term plan in this position if I play bishop takes f6? There is no target in this position for black, so does that lead me to believe that I shouldn't make this permanent move? Well, when we make a permanent trade like this, we want to consider what material is being left on the board for both colors. Obviously, we don't do this in a game before calculating. But for the sake of this video, let's put bishop takes f6 on the board. For white, we have an ultra-strong light-square bishop in our kingside fianchetto, and a strong knight on c3, which supports moves like e4 in the future. For black, they're left with an awkwardly placed bishop on f6, and what should be considered a bad bishop on b7, as black has 5 light squared pawns and 3 dark squared pawns. After c takes d5 and c takes d5, fixing the structure and making sure black's bishop stays bad, after the move rook c1, in games played by players lower than 1800 ELO, white wins 57% of the time as opposed to black's 38%. This is with the engine evaluating the position to be completely equal. However, because we have identified that we will be left with 2 good pieces and black will be left with 2 awkward pieces, white will find their play to be much more intuitive despite not having any clear targets in this game. But what worked out for me in this game was that I had a follow-up plan to my permanent piece imbalance. My plan for the rest of the game was to make sure black's light square bishop stayed as a bad bishop for the entirety of the game. If we skip to move 18 where I played b4, it is much more apparent that even though the engine is still evaluating this position to be equal, white should be doing better here as black's light squared bishop is absolutely useless. We won't go through the entire game, but on move 24 we can see the benefit of this piece imbalance. We're not just proving that our light squared bishop is better than their light squared bishop, but we're also proving our knight is better than their light squared bishop. Because black has no knight, they cannot utilize their outpost on c4. However, we could dive our knight into c5. After the trade, now the entire goal for us is to prove that our bishop is better than theirs. I started by stacking the rooks on the open file, and finally on move 26, my advantage becomes clear in the form of a mistake by my opponent. Bishop b7 allows bishop f1, targeting the isolated b5 pawn. After rook takes c4 and b takes c4 with tempo on the queen, I'm finally able to cash in on the free pawn, and I went on to convert this endgame into a win. It should be abundantly obvious that the only reason that I won this game was because of a long-term commitment I made in the opening. I stuck with my plan throughout the game's entirety despite the engine telling me that my game plans were not concretely winning. In the end, my plan paid off due to the exact board dynamic I intentionally constructed at the start of the game. I know it can seem like a very difficult decision to make in the moment. However, as long as you consider whether your bishop is good or bad and have a decent plan to follow up with, you should reach desirable positions. It should be noted that this also goes both ways. You do have to consider the exact same things from the defensive side. Of course, there will also be situations where trading the knight for your opponent's bishop will also be the beneficial trade to make. However, this is much more known, and I feel like I don't need to cover this in a video. With all this being said, I think we've covered the most important things regarding basic piece imbalances. So now let's look at pawn structural imbalances. Again, like basic piece imbalances, I think the best way to introduce pawn structural imbalances is by showing you a theoretical example. And we're going to look at everyone's favorite opening here, the London system. After d4, d5, bishop f4, e6, and bishop d6, white has an interesting choice to make already. What's interesting in this position is that all 3 of white's decent moves here will result in structural pawn imbalances. We're going to skip over moves like queen d2 or bishop g5 here, as although they're playable, these are quite unintuitive and don't include the concept we want to discuss. But the moves bishop takes d6, e3, and bishop g3 all have something in common. The capture from either side can be responded to by creating a structural pawn imbalance. Bishop g3 is the most obvious example of this. If black captures on g3, we're able to play h takes g3, and we have created a structural pawn imbalance. Now, white has the open h file for the rook to work with, whilst black will not have the same opportunities. We spoke before about some decisions being made during our chess games as permanent decisions, and this is certainly one of them. If we think this is a good option to go down, we could revolve our entire game plan around this newly opened file. I'll quickly go down a line that could potentially occur in your game to highlight this fact. Let's say knight f6, e3, castles, bishop d3, c5, c3, and knight c6. In this position, it's clear that white does not want to castle, but utilize the open h file to attack the black king. Again, like in previous positions, the engine thinks this position is defendable. However, on Lichess, in games played below the 1800 level, white wins 60% of the time. After knight bd2 and one small mistake like b6, white can jump in with knight e5 with a +3 advantage. After bishop b7, bishop takes h7 check, knight takes h7, and queen h5. White is completely winning as the queen and the rook line up on the h-file for an unstoppable attack. Obviously, your opponents won't allow play like this every time, but it's a good example of following a plan based on a permanent structural pawn imbalance. This is a quite simple one though. The open h-file leading to the early activity of a rook is not breaking news, so let's look at white's other options earlier. Instead of bishop g3, white could play bishop takes d6. However, this could create a structural pawn imbalance favoring the black side. C takes d6 is super viable now, as the new pawn on the d6 square supports any future e5 pawn push. I will also mention c takes d6 also gives black a 48% win rate on Lichess for players below 1800, compared to white's 47% win rate. However, if black does not choose to structurally imbalance the game and instead plays queen takes d6, white wins 49% of the time compared to black's 46%. Whilst those percentages don't seem like much, this is data from over 600,000 games of chess that have reached this position. It is absolutely no coincidence that structurally imbalancing the game in ways that are solid and allow you to form plans around the new board permanents result in a higher win rate for the imbalanced side. For example, a continuation of this with intuitive moves might be e3, knight f6, bishop d3, castles, castles, knight c6, c3, and e5. In this position, even though the engine evaluation is completely equal and we've played moves typical of an 1800 ELO player, black now wins 58% of games from this position. Why? Because we identified how our structural pawn imbalance could give us a game plan that our opponent could not participate in. Our game plan was using our doubled pawn in order to break for e5 in a way that our opponents could not. Again though, if we go back, white had another option instead of taking on d6. That option is just to play e3. Of course, in this variation, like bishop g3, our opponent is not forced to take, but let's imagine they do. What's absolutely mind-boggling is that after the recapture with the pawn, black's most common follow-up of knight f6 results in a 51% win rate for the white side, as opposed to a 44% win rate for the black side. Already a huge difference. But what is the benefit of this pawn imbalance? Well, the f-pawn will never be weak because we have the move g3. Our light squares around the king won't be weak as black's light squared bishop is inside their pawn chain. And we also have a light square defender in our bishop. The main plan we can go for that black cannot is play on the half-open e-file. We're taught to avoid doubled pawns at all costs when we start playing chess, but sometimes we need to unlearn rules in order to progress further. Let's show a continuance of this position to show how we can play around the half-open e-file in order to get a great position. Let's play knight f6, bishop d3, castles, castles, knight c6, c3, rook e8, and rook e1. These were all intuitive moves from black. However, white has a plus 0.7 evaluation and a projected win rate of 60% in favor of the white side. Why? Because white can employ a plan that black cannot due to the structural pawn imbalance between the two sides. White can play on the e-file and black cannot. Hopefully I've done a decent job at explaining pawn structural imbalances. In a lot of cases, putting them on the board will give you very easy game plans that your opponents simply cannot participate in. Naturally, there are hundreds of different kinds of pawn imbalances, so I won't be able to look at all of them in this video. If you'd like me to make a video specifically on pawn imbalances, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll think about making a video. But I think for now, we've covered the topic pretty well. With all this being said, I wanted to give you guys a live example of this happening in a game. It's all well and good me showing you guys fixed positions and telling you that imbalancing the game is the best way to continue. However, it's also very beneficial for you to see it happening in real time so you know that it's not just a novelty. So let's jump into a quick game where I'll explain all of my moves and show you guys some types of imbalances. So we're going to play a rapid game now to try and show you guys some of the concepts that we showed in this video. This is not my main account, by the way. This is my second account. It was my main account. I've got a new account now for playing rapid because I wanted to keep some of my over-the-board prep a little bit of a secret, but we do have a decent rating on this account nonetheless, so we should be getting some decent players. We get e4, so we're going to go for the Caro-Kann. I won't focus too much on the theory for this video, just because we want to show the actual imbalances. We've actually already got one on the board. We did not initiate this, our opponent did, but they initiated a pawn imbalance. The e-pawn for the c-pawn. A lot of the times you get c-pawn for the c-pawn, that is not an imbalance. So now we have one file to work with and our opponent has a different one. So let's see how this might pan out, whether or not this is good for us. This is theoretical, by the way. Obviously this is just the exchange Caro-Kann, but I'll show you how I know to utilize my file and how I know to utilize their, to defend their file. So I'm going to go with knight c6 here, just developing a piece. In the exchange Caro-Kann, the attacks do not come too early for the white side, so we don't have to worry about it too much. c3 seems like a very, very, very big, or slow move, I should say. Maybe it's normal, I'm kind of forgetting. But I think that's quite a slow move. We can just play knight f6. We want to play bishop g4. We don't really care about the contest for this file or for this diagonal at the moment. We've got a very strong bishop that will defend it. They're kicking us away. We go bishop h4, h5, and they're playing bishop e3. So a very passive setup for white. I'm just going to go e6, We're kind of just continuing on here. Okay, this is, they're making it a little bit hard for me to actually show these concepts. We're gonna play bishop g6 here. My opponent is kind of going crazy right now. Takes, I'm already threatening knight g4. Let's see if they do something about that. Knight g4, and the rook is behind it for free. They do. Can I play knight g4 anyway? Knight g4 anyway. What is the consequence? Knight g4 anyway is there bishop f4. Then I played bishop d6, bishop here. Yeah, the only problem with knight g4 is that my knight may start to get trapped on that side of the board. There is also just knight e4, which I think we'll end up going for. Knight e4 attacks the pawn. They're going to offer me a knight trade. Do I want this imbalance in the center? This is also a very common example of a pawn structural imbalance, doubled pawns like this. Is this something that I want? Well, first of all, this would remove the defender, or remove one of the defenders of the g5 pawn. So if I played something like bishop e7, knight takes here, there is this, takes, and then knight takes e4. Then I have queen g2 at the end, forking the rook and forking the knight. Is there any other variation of that I need to calculate? Bishop e7, takes, knight back here. What if knight takes straight away? Then takes, and I get this check. You've lost castling rights. No, you haven't. There's knight f2. But I do like that. I do like that quite a bit. Let's go bishop e7. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of these double pawns, because I watched a Jack Sark video on imbalances, and I learned that they are not always a bad thing. These, doubled pawns, we always think, okay, we don't want doubled pawns in our position. But in this case, maybe they're okay. So he doesn't go for it there. Takes back with the bishop. There is no change in this position. I assume that he's going to try and go for this knight e5 move. I don't mind just rook c8, knight here, maybe queen b6. Maybe queen b6 now is not a terrible idea. Rook c8, knight in. There's also takes. Bishop takes. Is there any cool follow-up? There is. Queen g2 again. Castles. Takes. I think that's good. Okay, that's this might be way more calculation than anyone is capable of doing watching this video, but I do like this position quite a lot. Let's go rook c8. Again, there is this idea. Okay, takes. We're removing a defender. They can play this, but then I play this. So takes. If they play this, I'm gonna have to take back with my pawn. Allowing this, takes. I think just taking here is okay. Taking here, this is kind of along similar lines that we were looking at. So takes. Okay, and now they decide that they are going to play it like this. We could take here straight away. Now we're up a pawn, but the imbalance is that there is also opposite side castling on the board. So takes. There is maybe the idea of d5, trying to break open the position. So let's say takes. I think we have to play takes, and we need to use our queen as a defensive piece. And if the queen is tied to the pawn, we need to get rid of it. This also protects our doubled pawn a little bit. Queen d5 is a big option. There's also castles, which forces the issue. Castles, now this knight can be captured, so let's say castles, takes, pawn takes, rook a8, queen takes, rook takes, queen takes. I don't think this position is getting great for us. Let's say castles, takes, queen here. Oh, sorry, here there is no pawn on b7 anymore, so just queen b8. Maybe rook, no, the queen is there, right, okay. Sorry, I just need to calculate this for just a moment. Castles, takes, pawn takes, rook a8, queen b7, queen d5. Takes, fixes our structure. Very good pawn structure in this position. Also has to play a3 as a follow-up. Where's our continuation? We've got double pawns over here. We've also got something to look at here. Castles, takes, pawn takes, rook b8, queen here. Actually, there was a pawn on c6. This actually doesn't trade the queens. But it is very interesting because now we're threatening to play rook b8. We're also threatening the a2 pawn. I really like castling. I like castling quite a lot. I think this position it's either completely equal or it's like -2, is my brief evaluation of this position. Would love to see the engine analysis after the game and see if I'm correct. So takes, he can't take this. I've got a lot of weaknesses. Maybe he doesn't have to take this straight away. Maybe there is d5 as an intermezzo. d5, I'm just going to... Okay, that's not the intermezzo I was thinking of. So he's trying to just completely ignore everything on this side of the board. Respect to it, I guess. How do we continue? So queen b6 asks questions, or it defends a7 at least. There is no real attack because of the move b3. So maybe my idea has to be like queen d5. Maybe there is also a c5. c5 pawn here, but then b4 is problematic. Maybe there's a5. a5, let's say h5 is the obvious idea. Takes, rook takes. c5, there's gonna be here. There's also a world in which I just ignore everything and play like queen d5, h5, g5, h6, g6, check, king here, and I just protect my squares very well. That's like a very plausible solution. Queen here, but maybe if that's what I want to do, maybe I should be playing queen b6, but then there is queen here. Okay, I'm going to go with this plan of queen d5. There's a method to the madness. Here push, check, king here. I'm protecting the dark squares with my queen. Ooh, I've missed c4. That's not great. That is an oversight on my behalf. c4 is a very good move. If I go here, I'm just gonna get, actually no, now I maybe have queen h5. Blockading the pawn. If takes, yeah, okay, let's go here. He can't take, this is very poisonous. Here I go takes. Okay, yeah, he's going to try and attack on this side of the board. Can I go c5? c5 here takes, rook takes. I like c5. This is an awkward pawn. I'm going to play it. I don't have time to calculate also. Let's play c5, see what he comes up with. If takes, takes. If takes here, if push here. Jeez, that looks... Okay, I don't know if I love that. Oh, he's playing rook take. Oh no, he's not playing rook takes. Okay. So what about if I bring my queen back? If I play this, yeah, okay. What if c4? c4 takes, c3 here. This is just getting dangerous though. Let's play c4 and c3 is my idea. I don't think you can take because of this c3 move. If you push, this is just getting to be just a very ridiculous position. Can I even just, wow, is this possible? No, there's queen here, but then I take with check. Okay, my queen can jump in. Here I take with check. The king has to go back. And suddenly my position is looking very nice. Let's bring a rook to the party. Here I can take, I think. I'm not too worried about this. Let's drop my queen back. We're pinning this piece. Let's go ahead and take this free pawn. Let's drop back with our queen. We're defending both pawns now. Now we're attacking this pawn. This pawn is going to fall here. I don't think we can takes. Yeah, I don't think we can do that. Sorry, I need to get my queen over here as well. That's somewhat important. You cannot take here. I've got a 3 onto nothing. So let's start pushing some pawns. I don't want to lose sight of anything in my position. I'm very happy, like holding onto this and this. There is a check, I go here. There is a check, I go here. There is a check. I think I scurry away with f5. Very, very dodgy defending. If the queen trade, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to play a6 on my next move. Very turtle defense in this endgame. Let's play a6. Probably wasn't necessary either. Let's go here. Any checks results in a skewer. Let's check now even. Check now and maybe we go... No, okay. Let's bring the queen back. I just want to defend. Maybe I need to bring my king up. There's no checks, it's a skewer. Okay, now he's going to be looking at the checks. I'm not worried about giving that a6 pawn up as much anymore though, because my pawns are just rolling. Although he does control a very nice square here. There is this check. I'm going to go up, defending my pawn. Let's go up again. Let's go up. Let's go here, defending. I've not got much time. Oh, I shouldn't have played that. I should have brought my king up. This is just bad play from my opponent here. I don't think I'm gonna have time. There we go, we don't have time. That was a really nice game though. I would love to go back and analyze this game for you guys. A winning position, but not enough time on the clock. Let's go back and see what we did right and what we did wrong. Okay, so we have a very long analysis ahead of us because this was quite a long and complicated game, but we have plenty of examples of permanent board exchanges, permanent board imbalances that we can look at. Some that I didn't actually even realize in the game. I didn't identify them to tell you guys. So that's what we have the analysis for. We'll skip through the opening a little bit. This is just an exchange Caro-Kann. I did say that there is an imbalance on the board already. We've got the open C file as opposed to the open E file. We weren't really able to, I wasn't really able to tell you how this exchange or this imbalance would affect the game because my opponent opposite side castled, which kind of rendered this imbalance a little bit less important compared to the other imbalances on the board. So I hope that makes sense, that this imbalance didn't actually end up being too good or too valuable, too useful because of the other imbalances that arose. So knight c6, c3 is a completely normal move. I don't know why I thought this was a slow move. It just kind of stops moves like bishop g4 from coming with a lot of venom. So they played c3, I played knight f3, bishop d3, and bishop g4. So I've got pretty much all of our pieces out. h3 is already a move that you don't see too often. Usually it's just castles, but h3 is a move as well, allowing the bishop to go back. You could, if you were really thinking about it, you could consider a move like h3 as an imbalance, because this is what we call a hook. You can see in the middle game, I actually, and maybe I wasn't actually, that was a different game I think I'm thinking of. But sometimes you can consider hooks here, like if you take on h4 while the king is castled, the pawn takes back, and maybe the knight opens up as a free piece. Sometimes that can happen. So it is an imbalance in its own way, but it is a lot less identifiable, and usually it can't be punished so well. So they play bishop e3 in response. Now we have e6. Ignore the evaluation for this position. I don't think that this is kind of, the evaluation isn't related to the imbalances on the board. It kind of just thinks that white is not playing the best moves, like bishop f4 was just a better move to kind of control some nice squares, bishop g5 as well. But bishop e3 is a fine move. e6 is the best way to respond, opening up the bishop of your own. And now they come with g4. This is certainly a pawn imbalance. You cannot undo pawn moves. And now there is a backwards pawn on h6 or h3, most importantly, and we are going to open up another permanent board imbalance with bishop g6. Of course, white doesn't have to take here, so this isn't an imbalance yet, but they can. And they did, and you can see that the evaluation is not perfectly in white's favor anymore because we have this open h file that we talked about. We immediately identified that we could take on g5. For example, if the knight jumped in, we take on g5 attacking the bishop, and then we can take the rook on the other side. So this is obviously a threat, and they go for this move, knight g5. I thought about a couple of moves here. I wonder, yeah, okay, so this gets a little bit trapped here after bishop f4. The knight does get a little bit trapped on the side of the board, so I'm glad we didn't go for this. I was also considering knight h5, but I thought that knight e5 was a little bit better. Apparently I was wrong. Knight h5 is quite a lot better, but knight e4 also seems fine. And knight d2 was played. So this was my first real think of the game, where I really wanted to go for this bishop e7 idea. Bishop e7, I was completely right in the fact that if they take, I'm going to take back. If the knight goes back, I'm going to take here. If they take here, I'm going to take here. They can't take here because I have this fork at the end of the road. No, they have knight g3. I missed that, but still, I think that this is a decent position. We should have this move, correct? Yeah, we have a free pawn at least. So whilst we don't win a piece with this fork, we are going to win a pawn at the very least. Even though we made an ugly double pawn, it was temporary because we had this pawn to cash in on. So, of course, they don't have to take this knight. I kind of planned for this. They ended up playing bishop h4. I completely missed a free pawn here. I guess I was a little bit too tunnel visioned in on my own plan, which happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to 1,000 ELO players, happens to 2,200 ELO players, happens to everyone. So I just played rook c8 here. My position is still fine though, according to the engine. They end up taking, and playing knight e5. And I was correct again that this kind of trade here would be beneficial to me. So bishop takes g5. They end up castling, which was the top engine move, not forcing the issue. I was kind of anticipating takes, and queen takes a7. And then I was thinking queen g2 again, which is the third top engine move. But I thought just maybe castles here would be good. But then queen takes f2 I also calculated, followed by, I didn't really get this far, but I thought that this position would be pretty good for black, which it is. But again, that's not a forced line. They ended up castling straight away. I thought that I didn't want my queen to be tied down to my bishop, so I traded it off. This makes another kind of permanent board change. I wouldn't say it's an imbalance though. We're just kind of protecting our pawn here. This is kind of unrelated.
And then I went for castling because I wanted to open up this knight. Apparently playing queen a5 is a little bit better. Queen a5, and they don't really have a choice in where to go. If they go somewhere like this, we're going to take this piece for free. So they have to play this, and this is a lot easier to convert. I wish I saw this, but I didn't. You can't see everything, so I castled instead. Still a fine position. Takes. Apparently rook takes would have been a little bit better. Why is that? Rook takes. Is it because of queen? No, it's because of rook a6. Ooh, this is a nice move, and you get this position, but I did think that this was bad. Apparently queen b6 in this position, and you can't really be doing anything crazy here. Rook c8, and yeah, this position is falling apart. Okay, maybe I miscalculated that position or misevaluated it. I think I did look at this position in my head in some of my calculations, but I got it a little bit wrong. We went for this instead with b takes, and now they come with h4, which is the correct idea for white. I did go for queen d5, which actually isn't as bad as the engine thinks, because of the move queen h5, which I kind of missed. I kind of got lucky there, and I did miss this move. The better move would have been to play rook b8, which is, I think, maybe a move that I looked at, but I wasn't too convinced with it because of the moves b3. So queen d5, c4, and queen h5, all good looking moves. They played queen c2, and I played c5. The correct move is e5. c5 is an idea as well. You can see c5 is the 5th top engine move. So c5, trying to crack open the position. Takes, and now we've got this pass pawn versus our pawn. I end up going with c4, which is the correct move. They took, I play c3, really getting their king in danger, and now we're threatening this checkmate. They have to play queen c2, we've got a check here, and the rest of the game didn't really involve too many examples of what we looked at. We picked up the free pawn here, but this was all about, and we got a little bit low on time here. I probably wasn't making the best decisions. Rook c6 maybe was a little bit better. If they play something like this, rook c7, and this is just an obvious kind of way to win. But I went for the idea of getting my queen a little bit closer. It was just a wasted move. We take here. This is something that you would convert when you had more time on the clock, but I just didn't, unfortunately. But that's kind of how chess goes sometimes. I think this was a good game regardless, and I'm happy with how we played. I'm happy with the imbalances and what I've shown you guys. Even though I didn't convert it in the most glamorous way possible, I think this does prove that board imbalances are a big part of winning games and understanding what those imbalances mean. So I think the majority of the imbalances, we'll quickly go through and look at them again. Again, that first imbalance of the C and E file didn't really come into play. I think the biggest imbalance, first of all, was my opponent's decision to play on this side of the board. Even though this did give us a slight head start, a little bit of an advantage to begin with, this move, bishop takes g6, and understanding how to use this as our main plan was a very crucial part of us winning the game. So we understood that we needed to use our h-file, then we jumped in with our knights, and then we started to understand the benefits of playing a move like bishop e7 and allowing this pawn to be lost in the center. For example, if we just played something like this, you can see how the evaluation slightly goes down. Let's say a move like queen d2, ready to castle. What do we play now? We have to find moves like queen a5, and the imbalances slowly shift off the board because now it looks like we're going to castle the same way. For example, they can't play castles right now because the pawn would fall. But let's say something like bishop f4 right now. We would have to find moves like knight e7. We would have to find moves like rook c8. And the imbalances slowly start to shift away because we're not taking advantage of the imbalances that are given to us. Whereas if we play bishop e7 and allow this, we're kind of improving our position without trading off pieces. And if they want to be the ones to trade down, they're going to have to accept our imbalances. So we got queen a4. Again, I missed this opportunity. That was kind of dumb. And then we dealt with this imbalance, kind of like the Botvinnik-Karls imbalance, where we kind of make that small imbalance of the bishop and knight to go and win a pawn straight away. So this imbalance of pawns, giving ourselves doubled pawns, allowed us to go straight ahead and pick up some more pieces. They castled, and then we could cash in. We have the extra pawn now, and we're going to try and win the game. And that's kind of what won us the game eventually. It was this pawn blockading all of these pawns, making them a bit useless. There was the imbalance of the opposite side castle, of course, but that's a very obvious one that I feel I didn't need to cover in this video. But I think we did a good job at using imbalances in this game to our advantage, and I think that is what got us the win. I think understanding the imbalances, even though our opponent did initiate a lot of the imbalances in this game, we analyzed what we were supposed to do, we figured out game plans to work around those imbalances, and that is what got us into a better position throughout this game.
I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and some of the information in this video can take you one step closer to reaching 2000 ELO. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would like me to show off some more small concepts like the one in this video that are commonly not taught on YouTube, and I'd be happy to make it into a series. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.